Throughout history, humanity has battled disease with relentless determination. Yet, the road to medical knowledge is littered with failures, some so horrifying they boggle the mind. Today, we journey into the macabre, counting down the top 10 worst medical practices in history, procedures so bizarre and harmful that it's hard to believe they were once common. Number 10. Bloodletting. Our countdown begins with one of the most infamous practices, bloodletting. Picture yourself in the streets of 14th century Europe. The air is thick with superstition. Your local doctor, cloaked in dark robes and equipped with an array of sharp instruments, declares that your fever can only be cured by releasing bad blood. The theory behind bloodletting was rooted in the idea of balancing the body's four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. An imbalance, physicians believed, led to illness. This led to treatments where leeches, scalpels, and heated cups were used to extract blood. Sometimes a patient would be drained so excessively that they could hardly stand afterward. Even King Charles II of England underwent this treatment during his final illness. Over the course of his last day, his doctors removed a staggering 24 ounces of blood from him, 1/3 of his total supply. Number 9. The lobotomy. Fast forward to the 20th century, where another misguided treatment gained traction. The lobotomy, developed by Portuguese neurologist Antonio Egas Moniz and popularized by American physician Dr. Walter Freeman. This so-called miracle surgery swept across Europe and the United States with alarming speed. Freeman turned lobotomy into a roadshow, performing thousands of procedures in as little as 10 minutes each. His preferred method: an ice pick slid through the eye socket to sever connections in the prefrontal cortex. The results were catastrophic. Patients who once suffered from depression or anxiety were left in states ranging from listlessness to severe cognitive impairment. The most infamous case was that of Rosemary Kennedy, sister to President John F. Kennedy. Her lobotomy left her unable to speak coherently for the rest of her life, hidden away from the public eye. Number 8. Opium-based soothing syrups. During the Victorian era, parents faced a common dilemma: how to soothe a crying baby. Enter the miracle solution: opium-laced soothing syrups. Marketed under names like Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup and Godfrey's Cordial, these concoctions promised rest for both mother and child. But behind the promises lay a dark reality. These syrups contained significant doses of opium, morphine, or codeine. Babies dosed with these narcotics would slip into a deep, unnaturally silent sleep. For some, that sleep became eternal. Medical journals of the time chronicled countless cases of infants succumbing to overdoses. An alarming number of these miracle cures contained no warnings about dosage, leading to tragic consequences. By the time the dangers were understood and regulations imposed, the damage had been done. Thousands of young lives were lost, silenced by ignorance. Number 7. Trepanation. Let's travel back thousands of years to the practice of trepanation, one of the oldest known surgical procedures. Picture a healer leaning over you with a sharpened stone, ready to drill into your skull to release evil spirits or cure persistent headaches. Found in cultures from ancient Peru to medieval Europe, trepanation was often performed without anesthesia. Archaeologists have uncovered skulls with multiple trepanation holes, suggesting that some patients not only survived but returned for additional procedures. Survival was possible, though at great risk. The lack of sterilization meant that post-operative infections were common and often fatal. Yet trepanation persisted into the Renaissance, regarded as a legitimate treatment for mental illness, epilepsy, and head injuries. Number 6. Radium water. Radium was discovered by Marie and Pierre Curie in the late 19th century, and the world was captivated by its mysterious glow. Soon it found its way into consumer products, touted as a health elixir. Radium water was sold in chic glass bottles and advertised as the key to energy and youth. Industrialist Ibn Byers was one of its biggest proponents, drinking up to 3 bottles a day. He praised its invigorating effects until his jaw disintegrated from necrosis and his bones crumbled. Byers died in agony, his case becoming a sensational headline that finally alerted the public to the dangers of radium. The public's fascination with radium extended beyond water. Radium was infused into makeup, wristwatches, and even toothpaste. The famous radium girls, who painted glowing watch dials with their lips to keep brushes fine, eventually developed cancers and gruesome injuries. Number 5. Mummy powder. In 16th century Europe, trade routes brought a new cure to the attention of apothecaries: powdered mummies, or mumia. It was believed that ingesting the ground-up remains of ancient Egyptians would heal anything from headaches to internal bleeding. Grave robbers and merchants capitalized capitalized on this demand, looting tombs and grinding mummies into powder. The wealthy eagerly paid fortunes for this supposed panacea, oblivious to the desecration and health risks. The powder was often mixed with herbs, leading to contamination and outbreaks of illness. This practice peaked during the Renaissance and gradually faded as medical knowledge advanced, but its existence speaks volumes about the lengths to which humanity would go in the pursuit of health. Number 4. Mercury treatments. Mercury, shiny, liquid, and deadly. For centuries, it was hailed as a cure-all, especially for diseases like syphilis. In the 15th century, if you visited a doctor with symptoms of syphilis, he might hand you a mercury ointment or prescribe a vapor bath. The phrase, "a night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury," became tragically literal. The side effects were devastating. Hair loss, kidney failure, severe mouth ulcers, and neurological damage became commonplace. Patients would experience uncontrollable drooling, which earned them the nickname dribblers. Yet doctors believed these side effects were proof the treatment was working. Ironically, mercury continued to haunt medicine well into the 19th century, from topical applications to calomel-laced laxatives that were given even to children. Number 3. Victorian asylums. Step into a Victorian asylum and you'll be greeted by the sound of rattling chains and muffled screams. These institutions were designed as places of refuge for the mentally ill, but became houses of torment where suffering was the norm. Treatments ranged from the disturbing to the outright inhumane. Cold water submersion was used to shock the mentally ill into normalcy, while rotational therapy involved spinning patients until they lost consciousness in the belief it would reset their minds. Women were particularly vulnerable, often institutionalized for perceived transgressions like hysteria, a diagnosis so vague it could include everything from depression to irritability. Once inside, many never returned home. Reports from the few who made it out alive helped fuel public outrage and eventual change. Reforms only came decades later, sparked by the rise of more humane psychological theories and activism. Number 2. Electroconvulsive therapy. Early versions. Electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, has come a long way, but its origins were far more brutal than effective. In the 1930s and 1940s, patients were subjected to massive electric shocks without anesthesia or muscle relaxants. It was a harrowing sight, patients thrashing uncontrollably, sometimes breaking bones during the convulsions. Initially, ECT was hailed as a miracle treatment for severe depression and schizophrenia, but in its primitive form, it left lasting trauma. Patients who survived these treatments often experienced severe memory loss and were rendered emotionally numb. Doctors were quick to promote ECT as a quick fix, and it became so mainstream that even mild cases of depression were treated this way. The practice evolved over time, but the chilling stories of its beginnings remain a haunting reminder. Number 1. The obsession with purging and vomiting. At the top of our list is one of the oldest and most damaging practices in medical history. The obsession with purging and vomiting. From ancient Greece to the Renaissance, the belief that the body harbored harmful substances that needed to be expelled led to extreme treatments. Doctors and healers administered strong emetics to induce relentless vomiting. The infamous hellebore root was a common ingredient, known for its toxicity. Patients would be forced to endure hours of violent retching, often on the brink of collapse. The most dangerous part was that this treatment was used for almost anything: fevers, infections, even psychological issues. Wealthy patrons, desperate for cures, believed this form of cleansing would rejuvenate them, but it often left them weakened or dead. It wasn't until the later Enlightenment that more empirical approaches began to replace these dangerous rituals. Medical pioneers started questioning the wisdom of purging, laying the groundwork for more modern, evidence-based care. From the dark halls of ancient practices to modern advancements, medicine has evolved at the cost of painful lessons. While we've come far, it's essential to remember the trials endured and the lives lost in the pursuit of healing.